are now entering the horror sanctum.
All rise and welcome back to the Horror Sanctum podcast. I'm Jay with John, Kelan, and TJ. And a funny thing happened a couple weeks ago. A rare occurrence where we all went to the movies and saw a film. So naturally, we all saw it. This rarely ever happens, if ever. We should talk about it. And the movie I am talking about, of course, is the groovy sequel to Evil Dead Rise. If you haven't seen it, there's no way to not give you spoilers. It's just too new, it's too fresh. So turn us off, come back later. We'll still be here. If you have seen it, go ahead and crank up your chainsaw. Come get some, and let's slice and dice our way through the sequel to Evil Dead Rise, directed by Mr. Lee Cronin. So synopsis of the film is there's a reunion between two estranged sisters. During their reunion, an earthquake happens, opens up a pit, which leads to a bank vault where someone has hidden away a copy of the Necronomicon, some albums. Naturally, curiosity gets the best of them. They play the albums, they read some words, and demons start running amok and possessing everyone around.
Yeah, it's a violent film. My oldest daughter, the week that it was supposed to come out, said she wanted to go see it. And, being a huge, Ash Williams Evil Dead universe fan, I wanted to go see it as well. So we just kind of worked it out where we went Sunday and watched it together, which is an interesting experience being a father watching such a violent movie with your daughter. She loved it, by the way. I'll give her rating at the end as well, since she's become a little horror fan, as Jay knows from all the stuff that, she does, the horror makeup that she does on herself. And then she has posters, little mini posters of Scream and Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre on her wall. So we decided to go see this movie together. And I mean, right from the beginning, it goes in. There's not really necessarily a downtime in this film. I mean, it starts and the gore happens within the first 5 minutes, and it doesn't stop from there. The title sequence of this film, where she raises out of the lake and Evil Dead Rise comes behind while the sun's setting, was gorgeous. I mean,
yes,
if ever was an idea for a poster already ingrained in a movie, I would buy that poster right now, because it's such a beautiful shot. Considering
best title card probably of any horror film.
It was so fantastic the way it was presented. Just gorgeous.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would expect something like that to be fan art. You see people do stylized versions of stuff, but yeah, it was a beautiful title card. And the movie itself it's dark through the whole film. The darkness doesn't take away from the things that are happening. A lot of times, sometimes movies I think are too dark. The lighting is what I mean, not necessarily the content, but the lighting's so dark that you miss a lot of the things. But in this one, even in the dark scenes, they do a good job of lighting the characters that you're supposed to focus on. Even in the hallway scenes, when they're looking through the peephole, it's dark in the hallway, but you can see the bodies on the floor. You can see her face. You can see her milling around, the creepiness of her movements. I will say I didn't like the book. I guess traditionalist, I remember, the face from the original Necronomicon or Book of the Dead whatever you want to call it. This doing it more like veins or arteries running across with the teeth on the end. The teeth were a nice touch, but the book kind of threw me off. I remember sitting in the theater thinking, don't like that. But I mean, critiques aside, it's a fun kill fest. And they did something in this movie, and I mentioned it briefly in our little text chain, that I thought was so brilliant, because they're in an almost abandoned apartment building. An earthquake happens, so their means of escape are gone. It's in a part of town where you're probably not going to get the cops to show up over gunshots and things like that. So all of this, a lot of times in movies, you're frustrated because you feel like somebody should be aware that something's going on, and nobody ever shows up. It's like, how often have you been in a busy part of town and there's nobody else on the street? But it seems like when the slasher's ready to kill somebody, it's deserted. In this movie, it totally made sense that the Evil Dead possessing the mother was able to basically just run rampant, because nobody else most of the apartments were probably empty at that time. It was getting demolished in a month. An earthquake happened, so there's more important things probably going on elsewhere. The stairwell collapsed, so there's no real way to get out of the building. They're basically trapped, which kind of felt like an homage maybe a little bit to the original Evil Dead. They're in a secluded location. There's no real means for them to escape other than to get in the car and try to drive away. There's nobody coming to save you, which adds to the fear aspect of this movie, is knowing that they're in there with it. There's nowhere else to go. Some of the visuals were unique when the girl's sitting on or standing on the counter and she's swallowing the glass and it shows the shard poke through. It's a subtle detail, but I feel like that would happen if you're swallowing large shards of glass. It's gonna poke through, and I thought that was just such a neat visual to throw in for something so little. But the movie just, it plays so well, as far as it doesn't feel like it's an hour and 37 minutes. I think it's the runtime, or somewhere around there. I mean, because like I said, it starts right off and it just goes through. It does not let up. It does not give you a moment to get comfortable in your seat, which I enjoy from a horror film. It's nice sometimes to have the movies like we've watched, where there's dialogue and it pulls you into the scenes or the characters. And then sometimes it's nice to just be on the edge of your seat from start to finish. And I think this movie did an incredible job with that. But considering we've all seen it, it's new. I'm ready to hear y'all's opinions. I think there's a general consensus among us, but it'll be nice to hear what everyone says. So, John, I'll throw it to you.
So I definitely really liked it a lot. I agree with what you said. I didn't think about that. That was good how they sort of blocked off the whole logical thing of what's going to happen. Why aren't the cops there? That was a good idea. I thought the gore was great. It wasn't Terrifier 2 level, hard to watch, but it was really good. And, like the scalping scene was really great. That was really well done. The few things that kind of, I don't want to say really were a problem, that just I didn't like as much, just nitpicking, were, the fan service thing is interesting, because on one hand, I didn't mind a lot of it, but on the other hand, it's hard with these types of franchises, because what they're doing is they're making a movie and they're cashing in on an IP, right? So they're saying, we have this IP, we want to make a movie, we have this idea. So on one hand, you want to connect it to the franchise. On the other hand, oftentimes you have to shoehorn in these things that sometimes, in my opinion, kind of weaken little parts of it. Like the line, "Come get some." I could see why they did that. It's not that big of a deal. But when I hear that, it's almost like they're saying, hey, remember Ash? Oh, he's not in this movie, but remember Ash? Yeah, this is Ash, but it's not Ash. It's like, I just think,
I think it was better than just going straight groovy. Like if she just said just groovy, then I think that would be a little too much.
I mean, I think if this was, I almost wonder how this movie would do if they would have just said, hey, this is made by the people that made Evil Dead. It's inspired by Evil Dead, but this is not Evil Dead. I wonder, that experiment, if that would work financially. And maybe it wouldn't. Maybe that's a risk that they wouldn't want to take. But I think just the fan service thing, it's a good and a bad thing. I really like the whole Dead by Dawn thing. I thought that was cool the way they did that. I like the book. I like the idea that maybe in this universe that this is just a different book. Like there's many books of the dead, and they're all
Right.
scattered through the world, and each one of them has like this different thing, like like a record, and maybe the one at the cabin is the reel to reel player with Dr. Nobi reading the incantations. But I really think it works. I mean, it's a dark film. It's very violent. The acting is great. The characters are likable. The kids, I felt bad for them. I really did. And the little girl, I really liked her. I thought she was like the best part of the movie.
Yeah, she was great for such a young kid. She was really good.
Oh, yeah. And I think the only thing I will say, the one other thing, aside from some of the fan service that I wish they would have done, is I wish they would have done the Evil Dead, like the transition thing where you have a Deadite and the Deadite turns back to normal to fool the character. Like that would have been kind of cool, like if the mom did that to the little girl, because then it would have been like, especially a little girl, that would have really thrown them off.
I was yelling in my head when she went to unlock that door
Yes,
because she
exactly.
still looked dead.
Oh yeah, no,
And like you
absolutely.
said, it plays better in the originals when they turn back to normal. It's easy to just fall into that. Oh, they're okay now.
Yeah, I mean, and I did one thing, and I think I said this to TJ. I was wondering, how did they get down the elevator at the end? Did it just work, or was it something else? Because that was one thing.
The keys were keeping it from shutting.
Okay, the keys
to the car. Yeah, the little girl.
It didn't necessarily work. It just kind of, once the door shut, it broke free. I don't know if that was an intentional homage to The Shining, which I've not seen, but I know the scene, the elevator scene, or not, with the blood rushing out. But I thought that was a neat little touch.
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a really, really good movie. It's hard for me to compare it to the first three, but I think I really liked it a lot more than the remake. And I thought that the ideas were good, and I really want to see what they do in the future, like if they do more standalones or maybe like where the books go. This is kind of a cool concept, right? But I don't know. I would be curious to see like how they play with the franchise in the future. Whatever they do, I don't want them to bring back Ash. I think at this point, leave that be, separate away from that. But I think the more you separate and the more books you bring, the more you can kind of expand the lore and do some different things. So, I really loved it.
Do you think they could go the Star Wars route like Harrison Ford did and Ash decide to, let them kill him in a scene just to be, so he can definitively be done?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
he's done.
Yeah, he is done.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that, but I just think it would be maybe a neat little aside that come to find out he's their dad.
He also said he was done when he come back for 3 whole seasons of a TV show. So,
right, that's true, and that's really the send off for Ash is the Evil Dead TV show. Like that's kind of the perfect send off. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it really works, and my complaints are minor. There's just little things that I think are nitpicky. So what do you think, TJ?
Yeah, so a lot of thoughts, kind of picking back on some of what Kelan and John said. The blood in the elevator is 100% was definitely an homage to The Shining, Kubrick's The Shining. And there's so many little things like that, but most of the things like that are calling back to previous entries in the Evil Dead series. This is a movie, it kind of rides 2 lines, right? Because with the 2013 remake, it's kind of like which Fede Alvarez, the director, said that movie does exist in the original universe, but it's almost starting to get to be kind of like the Halloween universes, where it's like, yeah, there's a version because they had Ash's car out there where that exists in the original trilogy, but there's a version where that exists unto itself. There's a version where that is in the same universe as Evil Dead Rise, but there's also a version where Evil Dead Rise could just be its own thing and have nothing to do with any of it. But there's also a version where all 5 movies exist in the same universe, and it's just the people from the original trilogy don't necessarily know what's going on with these other 2 newer movies. And
the new Hellraiser.
Yeah, very, very similar.
Could be its own thing.
Because, and I love the world building that they did. It was very subtle, but they said that there were 3 books of the dead. So one of them could be the
Oh,
one
okay.
that Ash had,
Yeah.
which may or may not be in an alternate universe reality or the past or the future, or who even knows. There's so many things. You could make this a time travel series again, even with the new things, even without Ash. Just with this construct, if there's multiple records or there's multiple books, people have tried to, record them, different things, and then realize that was a bad idea, and then try and hide them. And I like that world building, because that's almost like MCU level world building, where you can just have multiple timelines. You could have just make as many as you want, just individual unconnected stories that can pay homage to what come before, but not necessarily be connected, which I think is more where it seems to be trending, since Ash is not probably ever coming back in a feature film again. I mean, he's like 65. He's retirement age now, let Ash
He
have
still
his
looks
send-off.
great.
He does look great. And you can't beat that wit and charm of Bruce Campbell.
No.
But the only things I didn't like about this film, because I did like it a lot. It's hard for me to choose between this one and the 2013 remake, because I think the 2013 remake is actually scarier. I think Evil Dead Rise is a little bit creepier in parts. Like Evil Dead Rise doesn't have any or not a whole lot of like the jump scares or that kind of, building tension stuff. It's just generally, as soon as, the evil stuff starts happening, it's just generally creepy, and it kind of ratchets up as it goes. I don't like the eyeballs in the 2013 or this movie. I like my old Evil Dead, totally whited out, milky eyeballs.
Oh, yeah.
Which are a lot easier to do now. You don't have to like ruin your corneas like poor Bruce Campbell did in the 80s, trying to put those half golf ball size things over his whole eye. Look what the Boulet brothers do. That's their gimmick, but contacts have gotten a lot better. So I know that's just a stylistic choice, and I think it's probably done to separate these from the things that come before. But there's so many things. I mean, this is definitely a film made by fans of the franchise, for fans of the franchise. But even within that, even though it's been very well received, I mean, the opening week globally made like $40 million. For a horror film, when there's some big movies out right now, like Super Mario Brothers movie and some other things racking up cash, this is super successful. I would be very surprised if they didn't greenlight a sequel to come out in the next 4 to 5 years. And I've even heard, Bruce say, we're not going to make it be 10 more years. I think the plan is, now that they're doing this bigger universe building, that it's going to be a lot easier to make new ones as long as they're doing well, which I think this current timeline's got at least a couple more good movies in it, and will probably do well. It's kind of interesting because there is a lot of gore in it, but since there's been so many recent movies that have a lot more gore, like Terrifier 2, I feel like a lot of the gore gets kind of slept on. And I also don't think there's as much gore or as much cringy gore scenes as there was in the 2013 remake. So I think a lot of people are kind of downgrading the gore, even though it had a few really effective scenes, like I love the kid's toy, Staffany. And it's just a broken staff that is a setup. Somebody's gonna get stabbed with that. It's an Evil Dead movie. Okay, who's gonna get stabbed?
That's gonna be at cons soon.
100%.
People are definitely gonna make a Staffany.
100%, and that was an homage to the dagger, the Kandarian dagger that Ash used in the original trilogy. So that was a cool wink, and totally an opportunity to market and make a lot of merch you can sell for $50 a pop and make a killing at cons. The only thing I didn't like other than the eyeballs, which that's a stylistic choice, is the come get some line, which I did think was funny though, that the pizza place that they got all their pizza from, that was their catchphrase on under their logo was come get some. So I thought that was cute. And there's so many things like that. I trust that in rewatches I'll probably see more and more things and appreciate even more. I thought the acting was well overall, especially the little kid, and I mean it's the mother's movie, right? The girl that played the mother just knocks it out of the park as a deadite. I kind of wish they would release this Mother's Day weekend because it just would have made a lot of sense. I don't know what's coming out Mother's Day weekend. Maybe it'll still be around Mother's Day weekend and get another little jolt in business, but it seems like the perfect Mother's Day movie, right? And the only other thing that Kelan spoke to that got on my nerves was the fact that they didn't do the idea that plays out in the originals where the Deadites can just turn totally back to normal, because that was a perfect scene for the mother to have just turned back to normal. And that was the only thing that took me out of the logic, where I was like, these characters are stupid. Like,
yeah.
But you could kind of believe it because it was the little girl. If it had been one of the older people, I wouldn't give it a pass as much. But man, that mom was super creepy. Did a banger job. I thought the younger sister that did the final girl part was kind of cool. What kind of low key surprised me is I feel like this is like a low key pro choice movie, or like a pro life movie. My bad, because all there's a concept that's playing underneath this whole movie where you learn kind of in the opening scenes, well, after the intro scene, with the younger kind of screw up daughter who's going on the road as a tech with rock bands and whatnot, that she's just found out she's pregnant, and that's why she's going to talk to her older sister. You get the sense that it's about, should I keep the baby? Should I not keep the baby? And the Deadites keep calling that out, like, they got the supernatural abilities. When the girl's swallowing the glass, she says she's swallowing the glass because before that she was throwing up maggots and stuff, super gross. Hope you're not eating popcorn when you see that. But she said she was doing that to get rid of the stuff in her tummy. And then she said something to the effect of, don't you want to get the thing that's out of your tummy, kind of thing. And then by the end of it, it becomes clear that, yeah, she's going to be a mom. And that kind of alludes to the fact that, yeah, she's probably going to have this kid, but also she's now has to take care of her niece, probably as a mom too. This is just a very maternal, motherly, in a very strange kind of low key way. And in most gross out horror films, they would just go for okay, we're going to take that baby out of you and have a weird, or we're going to do something like disgusting and like taboo or whatever. And they didn't do that. They preserved that thread the whole way through it. They made it a thing that the Evil Dead could kind of like when the mom said, oh, I'm going to get two souls, that kind of thing. It immediately puts her in more jeopardy because, you're fighting to make sure that she stays alive, but also her unborn child stays alive if she wants that too. So I thought that was an interesting thing. I didn't fully know what the filmmaker's intent was with that, but it seemed very intentional, which I just found interesting. But overall, I loved the movie. I thought it was just the right amount of gore. And the other thing I want to say was, at the end, when all the Deadite pieces, after they kind of blew them all apart and they couldn't stand on their own, they all kind of form into this thing like from John Carpenter's The Thing, and they're just this fleshy, crawly spider thing, but it still kind of has the main mom's face. I loved that. I love that it become like almost a totally different movie there for like the last sequence in the garage. And I think that was totally a homage to The Thing. just like the blood in the elevator was an homage to The Shining. I think there's so many little things like that in this film that will reward rewatches, I think.
Yeah. I hate that actress that played the mom. And
Really?
I hate her because I watched the Mist television series.
Okay.
And she plays probably the most unlikable character I have ever seen in any show, any movie. She won me over with this one, but going into it, I'm like, God, I can't stand her. And
Does she play the Marcia Gay Harden
What's
role
that?
does she play the Marcia Gay Harden role of the overly religious zealot that was in the movie?
No, she plays the mom, like the main family.
Okay. I
Yeah,
haven't seen the
it
series.
was awful, 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 awful. One of my biggest takeaways was the child who plays the records is trans, and horror has a very messy history with trans characters in film, and I think this adding her to this cast is going to help change the way we look at trans characters in movies. I appreciated that a lot. A lot of people's issues with the remake and this one is we covenant the originals. I mean, it's one of my favorite franchises of all time. And when we see a remake, we want the same things we got then. And it just doesn't work that way. The remake in 2014, 13, whichever year it was super violent. And I appreciated that. Completely different movie. And that's what it should have been. It's kind of like, you know, you love a band, but all their songs sound the same. You kind of get over it. And the 80s were a hell of a time. Things were different. Everything was different. Times have changed. Violence is key now. And I think I rewatched the remake before I went to the theater to see this one. And I still liked it. Like, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but I still like it and I can appreciate it. I take away the original trilogy and look at it as you know, individual work, and you can appreciate it more. That's the same way with a lot of movies, like the Nightmare Before Elm Street remake everybody hates, but that's because it's not Robert Englund, and it's not going to be Robert Englund. That was the point. But if those movies didn't exist, that movie would probably have a bunch of sequels, you know. I think they do have, I think they said they had ideas for 4 or 5 sequels to tie to this one. I think that would be cool to see. I would like kind of like the anthology version of it, where it's different stories with different books. Other than that, we said the Staphany. Aside from Staphany, one of the first things we see in the earthquake is a wood chipper. As soon as we saw that wood chipper, we're like, okay, we know what's happening here. Mm-hmm. And they did give you enough time to forget about it before anything happens with it. But like you guys said, her saying "come get some" is probably my least favorite part of the entire thing. It did feel like it was trying just a little too hard.
Yeah.
But overall, it was fantastic. I'm very desensitized. It takes a lot to make me cringe or be like, oh shit, you know, or even cover my eyes to a degree. Fingernail stuff can do it. Teeth stuff can do it. Cheese graters can also do it.
Oh,
yeah.
That hurt to watch.
Yeah.
I am scared to death of cheese graters. Was it mandolins? Like, we had one of those and I grabbed it one time and cut my finger. I'm like, I'm scared to death of those. So that scene, while I'm sitting there with like 10 other people at 11:05 a.m. on a Monday, like, oh fuck, you know, like grit my teeth, like that hurt me so bad. That and the scissors in the nose.
Oh yeah,
because those scissors were the same scissors that were at your grandmother's house that were heavy as shit.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing those get shoved up, like I felt that. So stuff like that I can appreciate. But everybody did a fantastic job in the movie, all the actors and actresses. I do like how it was secluded, even though it wasn't. It was very barbarian-esque in a way, like something away from everywhere else. But I thought they did a great job. Bruce and Sam Raimi produced it, which I enjoyed that. Like, I'm fine with them being behind the scenes. And after it went off, I texted you guys. I said, is there anything after the credits? Because I was going to go, and there wasn't. I'm like, do I want Bruce to show up? You know, like the remake, he just shows up at the very end and says silhouette almost like groovy. That's great, but it's not necessary.
Oh, I didn't
And by
even know it
doing
was
that-
his silhouette. I thought it was just his voice.
No, it was his face and everything. But by doing that, you're telling everybody, hey, we're still tying it to these originals, which they shouldn't do that. They just cut it. Like, let him produce it, whatever, maybe a callback showing that it is the same universe. And I love Bruce Campbell more than I love most members of my family, but I don't need to have him in these remakes. I just don't.
Yeah.
So, but other than that, fantastic. I'm glad we all went and saw it. Kelan surprised me when he said he went and saw it in theaters because he's like the last one to see anything most of the time. I'm like, well, damn. Now I'm the last
Thanks.
one. And I just happened to be coming back from vacation and had a day off. I'm like, I'm going to go see it. Let's talk about it. We'll push other episodes back because we all, enjoyed this film. So before we get to the ratings, we talk about the kills. There were a few. Mine was probably the most boring, but it was still kind of cool. It's like where she bit homie's eye out
Oh yeah.
and then spit it into his
You
brother's mouth
suck.
and he choked.
You suck.
Oh,
You
yeah.
suck. That was
That was my favorite kill because it was original. And it was simple. He's like, and then you never see him again. So you're like, oh, he
it
died.
was
He
so
choked.
absurd.
Yeah.
It was so of all the
That,
violence.
that's
Kellen,
where
what
you
was your-
see
what was your
the
favorite
Sam
kill, Kellen?
Raimi, Bruce Campbell like influence there, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Little slapstick. And I appreciate that. What was yours, Kellen?
well. So that was it. Just because everything else in it is the typical violence and gore that you expect from these type of movies, and then just out of nowhere, the guy's sitting there, panicking, and then swallows the eyeball and dies. I was like, that's of every. I mean, he got off easy comparatively because everybody. But if I can't pick that one since Jay picked it, then it's probably Ellie in the elevator, just because it talk about visuals in this movie. It was such a strong visual seeing her strung up like a marionette and then limbs broken, and it just cut off of that scene with her strung up in the elevator. But yeah, the eyeball thing. It's for a dark, more violent movie, and like you said, the original ones had the comedic element. Definitely, even the TV show was heavy on comedy. It was more of a comedy than a horror film at times. Even the famous fight scene in Evil Dead 2 with his own hand. So I enjoyed the absurdity of that kill. I'm just
John?
Probably the first. I really liked the scalp thing because that was just so sudden, and the girl crawling on the deck and you see her bleeding out. That's really brutal, because especially when I see someone bleed out like that, I'm just like, oh, it's horrible, right? It's just so slow, I will say one thing: the creature CG, like the thing homage with the limbs and all. I liked that. I did. The only thing I didn't like was, I think at the very last shot they showed a little too much, because nowadays they go for CGI. That's just, it is what it is, right? People aren't going to put time into practical effects.
Yeah.
I saw the flaws in it a little too much at the end. I was like, oh, don't show that. That was my only thing with that, is I thought if they just would have darkened it a bit, because CGI is just so blatant to me now. But yeah, the scalp is definitely my favorite kill.
But there was no one there to pour bleach or salt in her scalp.
That's true. Yeah.
Also, I meant to say it, the creature was one of my favorite parts too, just because that kind of gave us something different that we haven't seen in the other films. So I appreciated that. TJ, what was your favorite kill?
Well, I would have said the eyeball was the one.
We can have the same favorite kill, guys. That's why we do a podcast.
I mean, that was the standout for me for the dark humor, and it kind of breaks, a kind of tense moment. The thing that was the most cringe to me and had the most audible gasp in a fairly full theater that I watched it with my daughter was the cheese grater scene, and that was just like no kind of thing. So I love that. Remind me though, who got the Staphany? Didn't that get stabbed in somebody's eye?
I know it got stabbed through the sister's mouth out the back of her head.
That's it.
Yeah,
I liked that. If
And
other than the eyeball thing, I'd go for
before
that.
we get away from the cheese grater, though, as much blood was in this movie, that was the most realistic looking expectation for somebody grabbing a cheese grater and pulling it across somebody's leg, because it didn't just start immediately pouring blood. It looked like what would happen if you
It
were,
beat it up.
that made
just
it
like the
so
little
much
dots.
worse.
Yeah.
If I have to use a grater at all, I leave like this much. Like there's like still half a carrot left. Like, I don't care. I'm not gonna risk it.
You're not gonna. Yeah.
I've taken a little off the tips of some fingers before on some cheese graters. They mean business.
And it does the same thing. It just beads up. It doesn't just start pouring blood.
It does.
It's that yellowish pink color. Oh.
Awful. All right. So there's our favorite kills. For rankings, you know, I go back to rewatchability like always, and how much I enjoyed it, and if I talked to other people about it. I gave it a 4.5.
Oh, we should also rank our 5 movies of the series together.
Well, I think they're all going to be the same, right? It's going to be 2, 1, 3, 5, 4.
Yeah,
I'm with John. I think
that's
three
not mine,
is
but
better than 1. I would say 2, 3, 1. And 3 is really close. It's just there's something special about Evil Dead 2, but I'm with John. 3 is just it's fantastic.
it's relative to what you look at. Favorite for me is 3. The best is 2. But I still love 3 the most. I would objectively say 2 is the best film. But yeah.
I agree. So 4.5 for me. TJ, what'd you give it?
I'd give it a 4 out of 5. Yeah, it's a solid movie. I think I do like it slightly better than the remake for character reasons. I think more than anything else. I feel like I like the characters in this one a little bit more, and it's a little more. I mean, they were just in a cabin for the most part in the remake, but I like
more original. This one was. There was more to sink your teeth into,
and it has more in the level of world building, and the fact that it's a different book, but it's tying together the same mythology and the same spirits and whatnot, and I liked some of the character interactions.
So 4 from you, John.
4 out of 5. Very solid, really good. Liked it more than the remake. I really, it's so hard to compare this to the first 3. It's just its own thing. I do prefer the first 3 for sure, always, but this is still a great movie. So I'd say 4 out of 5. Take a point off just for nitpicky stuff, but yeah, really solid.
Kelan?
Just so that he's here.
Oh, nice.
So like I said, I went and saw it with my daughter. My daughter, directly after, said it was a 5. She really enjoyed it. She had a lot of fun watching it, and that's a pure opinion because I don't think she's seen any of the original Evil Dead movies or anything like that. So I'm going to try to expose those to her as well. But she gave it a 5. Me personally, it's a fun movie. I'm a lot more stingier, I think, with my grades, so I gave it a 3.5. But I will say, I am perfect, and this is something hard to do, and I think y'all have all touched on it with the characters and everything. I am perfectly okay with Beth being the new Ash in this new universe. She was so good in that role and developing into being the badass at the end. I would be perfectly fine if she comes back and she's kind of the new, like I said, Ash Williams in this new universe.
Yeah. Same. She was a great final girl, and you got to see her do the arc from being the terrified person to having to take on the mantle and do all the Ash things.
What did your daughter think of Terrifier 2?
She has not seen it. I'm trying to talk her into watching Barbarian. I think she would really enjoy that one.
Yeah, that's not that bad, I don't think.
Yeah.
My daughter thought this whole movie was funny, and it was a letdown because she thought it was going to be a lot scarier than it was.
See, and it's funny because this is they're building a darker universe. They're getting little moments of comedic value, but for the most part, it's just more about cringe and creepiness and scare factor. So that's an interesting take.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
so
all kids are desensitized.
There's going to be a 4 out of 5. Not too shabby. If you're still with us, thanks for sticking with us. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope you enjoyed the movie. Be sure to go follow us and subscribe over on YouTube, Instagram, join the church on Facebook. And while you're there, leave a review. I don't know how many reviews we have. I don't even know how to check that, but do that. That would be groovy of you. I'm not sure what episodes next week because we get requests, we get ideas, and we kind of shuffle things around. So the only way to truly know is to follow us on Instagram. We'll let you know Saturday or Sunday before, and keep listening, and you'll know. So before we go, let's do it. We kind of got jumbled. So real quick, Evil Dead movie rankings in order. So mine would be 2, 1, 3, 5, 4. TJ?
We're the exact same.
Say, John?
3, 2, 1, 5, 4.
And yeah, so controversy. So 2, 3, 5, 1, 4.
Wow.
Interesting.
Wow.
Interesting.
One is nostalgia. It is a terrible movie. The acting's bad. The shooting's mediocre.
I didn't know what they were
just not
doing. It's fine.
I know. I'm just saying. It's if I had to rank
sorry,
them.
everybody listening. I didn't know he was going to go there like that.
Oh,
All right.
Canceled.
So with John, Kelan, TJ, I'm Jay. And until next time,
Keep it spooky.